I used to carry Vicks VapoRub.
You can't actually keep a weapon on the side of your bed.
Accidentally shot himself.
I mean, it's very tragic what happened.
It's not for everybody.
Today on episode 3 of The Lens from BodyCamBust, Greg's going to talk to us a little bit about the Zion Staples case. So Greg, you saw the footage, you heard about the case. It's pretty sad what happened. I can't understand why the mom did that. Can you talk a little bit about the case and why did she get the sentencing that she ended up with?
I'm a little surprised at the sentencing, but basically the case was officers received a call, and I guess it was definitely an acquaintance of hers. I think based on what she was saying, was it the girlfriend of her ex or something? But anyway, they received a tip that her name was Sushi. Her son, Zion, who was 10, had accidentally shot himself and killed himself. And she had basically hidden the body down in her basement. That was the initial call that they were responding to.
I mean, it's very tragic what happened, but what do you think someone in her position, what do you think was going through her head to come up with the idea of not calling the ambulance, the police, the authorities to, disclose what happened with this tragic accident?
Well, obviously, I'm sure there was a lot of panic involved, but based on what I saw when the detectives were interviewing her, I think a lot of it was just selfishness. She was more concerned about her getting in trouble than the death of her 10-year-old son, which is pretty pathetic. I mean, there's no excuse for that.
So what are the rules in the States with regards to firearms? Like, for example, here in Canada, you have to have a lock on your firearm, or it has to be like in a safe. You can't actually keep a weapon on the side of your bed out in the open. So maybe you could elaborate for our fellow Canadian viewers, like, what are the rules with regards to storing a firearm in your own property or in your house?
It really varies state to state, but usually if there's children in the household, they want like a gun lock, a trigger lock at least on the gun. But again, that's really a state to state thing. She was in Illinois, and I have a feeling in Illinois, again, this is just my gut feeling, that she probably was supposed to have the gun secured somehow because there were children in the house.
I see. So you're saying, like, there's actually some states where you do not need to secure a firearm.
I'm just saying that the gun laws in the United States, they vary dramatically from state to state. So I know here in California that if there's kids in the house, you're supposed to have a gun lock on the a trigger lock on the safe at minimum.
Okay. So I'm just curious. So let's take a hypothetical situation in California. What would happen if someone visited your house with a family and you had a firearm in the house and the child grabbed a hold of it and it discharged and someone got injured? Who would be responsible for the injuries of that weapon?
Well, the in California, the gun owner, there would be culpability there, so they would definitely be charged with something. Child endangerment. If there was a death, probably manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter.
The way she stored the remains of her son, where they found him unfortunately in a trash can, do you think that added to her punishment? The way that, like, in this particular case, I guess, is she being punished for being negligent and the son died from her negligence? And then there's other charges for the way she handled the body?
Yeah, exactly. She was charged with child endangerment, basically, destructing evidence, but there's specific laws involving, dead bodies. you're not allowed to just throw a dead body in a garbage can. There's specific laws against that in every state. And then also failing to report what had happened, report a death. So there's a few charges. Though I don't think she was charged with involuntary manslaughter, which surprising to me based on what I saw, in the video. And then also I did a little reading on the case as well, and I didn't see that charge pop up, which in my opinion it should have. I think she holds some liability there as far as the death.
Can you elaborate as to why you think that she's liable to the death?
Well, if she has a 10-year-old kid running around the house, leaving a loaded weapon, a loaded gun out to where he had access to that gun, I think is, pretty irresponsible. So that's where the liability would lie.
What did they actually specify what type of weapon?
No, not that I saw.
I mean, God forbid a parent or anyone is in this situation ever in the future. If ever someone gets injured or dies from a discharged weapon through an accident, what do you think are the right steps to deal with this situation like that?
You mean for a citizen dealing with that situation?
Yes, for a citizen.
Well, definitely, call 911. It's an emergency call, and there may be a chance to save that person's life depending on what kind of injury it is. So the most important thing is 911. And with the 911 call like that, you're going to get, the paramedics will roll as well as police. So it kind of covers everything.
Have you ever witnessed in your 30 years as a cop a similar story like this that you can share with us?
I was involved in a very high profile homicide. It was actually like a serial killing type of situation. And I was part of the team that was looking to recover one of the victims. Her name was, and ultimately she was found like partially buried by a lake in San Diego. And I was involved in a case where a man basically killed a Brazilian foreign exchange student and dismembered her and scattered parts all over San Diego. And we received a call. Some guys were in a dumpster, looking for aluminum cans and found some of the parts. I was involved in that. And check the welfare calls like they were responding to are it's a daily occurrence for police officers. Going on to check the welfare. A lot of times it's the letter carrier calling because mail's piling up, and quite often it's a deceased person who nine times out of 10 it's going to be like a natural death, not a homicide like this was, or the other thing, like an accidental shooting or anything. Usually it's going to be an older person who passes of natural causes.
I'm curious, if a crime doesn't happen in front of a police officer, where they witness someone getting injured or dying in front of them, if there's a body that's in a fairly poor state of decomposition, do you bring a special unit, or are there times it's just a regular cop that shows up and has to deal with the remains or parts of a body?
With San Diego PD, the patrol officers they'll deal with the initial call, and they're going to look at the conditions and determine if there's any suspicious circumstances. And if there are suspicious circumstances, then the next thing they'll do is just kind of hold the scene down, call for a supervisor. The supervisor will come, and if they're kind of jiving, they're both seeing the same thing, these suspicious circumstances, then they'll lock down the scene like a crime scene, and then the homicide detectives will come in and they'll take over the case.
So one question I had is, like, when it comes to like finding bodies, sometimes there could be, I guess, odors. What products or tools do you use to limit the smell? Like, do you put cream under your nose? Is there a mask, or Is a cop forced to go in if he really feels ill from the scene? Can a cop leave the scene and say, look, this is just too much for me? Or do they have to go in? They got to go in.
It's just one of the hazards of the job, and it's horrible. I used to carry Vicks VapoRub in my gear bag, and if I was going into you know, a lot of times check the welfares, you know, and I didn't laugh just now because I thought it was funny. It was just sort of, you know, a nervous laugh, I guess. But recalling several situations I've been in with a check the welfare, and the first thing you're doing is, you know, checking the perimeter of the house, looking for, if no one's answering the door, looking for a point of entry, like a window or something you can get through. And, you know, it's a horrible, horrible feeling on a call like that when, you know, you find a window and there's like flies all over it. You know, that's the first sign of it's not, this is going to be not a fun call. And yeah, then once you get in there, and you have to, police officers, you learn after a while, you just sort of detach yourself emotionally on these type of calls. And you just, it's a job that you have to get done with. You know, you can't not do it. You have to do your job. And then once it's over and you kind of decompress, that's when you start kind of reflecting on everything you saw and everything you had to touch, and just thing that just normal citizens don't have to deal with. And um, yeah, on a daily basis, officers are going to these type of calls. But I used to use Vicks, and I knew guys too that would light up a cigar, you know, and have a cigar smoldering in their mouth while they're with that type of situation. But I don't smoke, so I would just put Vicks underneath my nose.
Is that a common trick that cops use, or is that your personal Greg technique, this whole Vicks?
No, that's a lot of officers that I worked with did that. You know, Vicks. You can put on like a paper mask, you know, but that doesn't really work. It's very pungent, penetrating odor. And once you're at a call like that, if you're spending any time around, you know, a decomposing body, you smell like that. It gets in your hair, it gets in your uniform. It's so I would always, you know, if I was in a scene like that for a long time, I would go back to the station and change out or maybe even shower. It's pretty disgusting.
Once the cops come and there's a crime scene and they lock it down and they get all the evidence that they need, who's in charge of bringing the body? What happens to the body? Does it go to a coroner? Does it go to a police station? Does it go to the morgue? Like, what happens with the body after they find it?
Basically, the detectives are taking care of everything first. You know, they're processing the scene, making sure all the evidence is preserved and documented, photographed. They draw a very detailed diagrams and with measurements of everything they're finding, whether like say a shell casing or something, you know, they're measuring it in proximity to like walls and stuff, you know, so they can triangulate and recreate scenes if they have to. So after they're done doing everything they need to do, then the medical examiner comes in, the coroner, and they'll take custody of the body, and they'll bags will be placed over the hands and feet and everything, just again to preserve any trace evidence that might be on the fingers or shoes or feet or whatever. And then the medical examiner, they'll transport the body to the coroner's office, and then there'll be a forensic autopsy done to determine the cause of death.
And these autopsies, are they done by doctors, or like who does the autopsy?
The medical examiner. Yeah, they do those. I guess they're doctors, but they're the ones that do the autopsy.
Okay.
Which one of the things recruits with San Diego Police Department have to go through, by the way, towards the end of their training, is they all go to the medical examiner and watch an autopsy take place. I mean, like close enough to where you could touch the body if you wanted to.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and that's where you start. That's where you first get that little taste of what your job's going to be like. You know, you deal with a lot of death, a lot of negativity, and it's not for everybody. A lot of people decide they don't want to do the job after seeing that.
So, Greg, I watched quite a bit of the footage of the Zion Staples case, and a large part of the videos that we received had a lot of audio muted. And I mean a lot. So, yes, we got the content through the Freedom of Information Act, but why was it that there's so much of the audio missing when the cops are interacting with each other? Why do you think we did not have access to it?
Well, I know that San Diego Police has a unit that does the redactions. So there might have been names mentioned, like witness names that they didn't want out there in the public arena. There's probably a lot of most of it probably had to do with personal information, names of witnesses. Witnesses are priority as far as they want to protect their privacy. So I would imagine that's probably what it was.
So, Greg, thanks again for giving everyone an insight into what probably happened in the mind of Zion Staples' mom, and also letting people know what it's really like dealing with those type of situations for cops that show up on the scene, unfortunately, for these type of situations.
Yeah, whenever children are involved too, that's really cuts deep with a police officer. That's where they, especially if they have kids at home, it changes everything. So that must have been a horrible discovery they made. And yeah, I, I can tell you those officers are going to wear those memories the rest of their lives.
Well, for those of you that are new to the podcast and to our channel, please subscribe and check out these other videos.